go.
Streaming from South Africa to the world. This is the Stonks Go Moon podcast. What just happened? We break it down so you don't have to.
Welcome everyone to the Stonks Go Moon podcast. My guest today, Florian Decludt. He is a growth hacker at Reddot Advertising. Florian, welcome to the pod.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Rocco.
This is the pod that has been rescheduled so many times. I hope it's worth it. Let's see where it goes. Flo, I've known you for a couple of years on LinkedIn, and when you first popped up onto my radar, you were teaching yourself and others to learn languages in a ridiculously short space of time. I was like maybe a week or a month. I can't remember quite what it was. And then I sort of picked up, hey, this guy knows shortcuts. Is that a fair assessment?
I wouldn't say I know shortcuts. It's just I like stretching my mind.
Yeah.
And whenever you start to stretch your mind, so let's try achieve something huge in a very short period of time.
Okay.
It kind of forces your mind to think very creatively and very effectively about stuff, because you just don't have time to go about trying to plan for the right thing or something. You just have to execute and come up with something. So I actually like doing those high intensity exercise. So I've done it for languages. I've been doing it for LinkedIn growth. I've been doing it for growth marketing. It's just you pick something very specific and then you try to compress it into as short time as possible to see how good you can become. And it's become kind of like a challenge, actually.
Yeah, and that's where, for me, the natural step came to what you're doing now is the growth marketing. For those that might not be aware what growth marketing is, just how would you explain it in layman's terms?
So growth marketing is pretty much the art and the science of growing a business online. And the art part is that you have to be very creative. So you have to think in terms of what's the right channel, what's the right online channel to use, what's the right message to have, what's the right creative. So that's the art part. And then there's the scientific part, which is at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what you think. It's just you try, you collect the data, you keep what works, you keep what works, and you kill what doesn't work, and you keep iterating again and again and again until you find the right, until you pretty much maximize your growth. And it's very similar to what I've been doing with learning, actually, because you were talking about shortcuts. I think the only shortcut there is to learning is just you ramp up the intensity. Instead of trying once a day, you try 10 times a day. Okay. And if you try 10 times a day, you're going to learn not 10 times faster, but 100 times faster, because all the data will be a lot fresher in your mind, and so you'll be able to you have a lot more data to work from, so you'll be able to iterate a lot more quickly, and you will be able to improve a lot more quickly.
Yeah. So this brings me to the segue into, what the space that I'm in, and the space that a lot of my network is in, is the education into finance, right? Or Edtech. And the two major issues that's been around for a while and it doesn't seem to get addressed is the one that it's extremely boring, and I'll get to that one now. And the other one is that you have all this information out there. There's hardly anything new, right? But people don't really want to do it, so or stick with it. So the first one is, if I can use an example, if there are two YouTube videos, right? The one is a guy driving a Lamborghini in the south of France. And the other one next to it is a video of maybe someone showing you how to create passive income or active income to buy a Lamborghini. The one guy with a guy driving the Lamborghini in the south of France will, by a factor of 100 or sometimes 1,000, outweigh the one that's the educational one, right? This one we perceive as value. This one is perceived as entertainment. That's a problem that the education space has at the moment, is that people are picking education over what we perceive as value. So if we're going to change, Edtech is going to change that dynamic. It has to incorporate some elements of entertainment into value. What's your thinking there?
Well, I think there's definitely some element of entertainment. But, the hard truth is, like, if you really want to learn something and you're learning it for the right reason, like the best kind of practice is very boring. Like, the way you learn a language, is pretty much you keep on like repeating the sentences and you kind of expose yourself to the language, and you fail a lot, and then you'll improve like that. Like, you're not going to learn a language by playing a fun app or something. Like, that's you're just kidding yourself. But to your point, with the two videos, like the educational video and the Lamborghini guy, the reason why the Lamborghini guy is outperforming is because you're selling the end result. You're selling the benefit. The benefit is, well, I know how to make money. With that money, I'm able to drive around in Lamborghini in south of France and make passive income, and that's great. And people want that, and they want the benefit, but at the same time, they don't want to put in the effort to get there, right? I mean, the formula is pretty much they want a very big result in as little time possible, and they want to be almost sure that they're going to make it, and they want as little effort as possible. If you can minimize the effort and the time, and you can maximize the certainty of achievement and the size of the achievement, then you pretty much have a winner. So the thing is, in the finance education, what I think is a problem, and it's in education in general, is that people approach it as like knowledge for knowledge's sake. Like, it's stuff you should know because it's important for you in life, but you don't really anchor it into something very tangible. I mean, even if it's something like, you're going to be set for retirement, or you're going to be safe, or in case something happens, you're going to be in a good financial standing or something. But I think that's not as tangible as, I'd be able to have a Lamborghini and, pick up all the girls I want and drink champagne for lunch, or, whatever, that's a much more tangible benefit to it. And so I think it's more in the way that so it's two things. It's in the way that it's packaged, package in terms of a benefit and make that benefit extremely tangible. Yeah. And then the other thing is, you see a lot of trainings out there, and people pride themselves as like, oh, you get 24 hours of videos, and I look at I have 24 hours of training to get a financial education certificate. I'm like, that's just too much. That's just too much. There's no way I'm going to sit for 24 hours of video. Yeah. So I think the key is also, be extremely focused, and I teach micro lessons about a very specific element, and instead of making one big course, make 100 tiny courses that people can follow for 20 minutes over lunch break. Yes. And maybe it's more effort, maybe it will cost more money for people to buy those courses, but then the likelihood that they actually digest all the content, complete the course, digest the content, and take action is a lot higher.
I think that's something crypto has done very well, but the reason I'm not focusing on crypto is I'm focusing on traditional finance, because traditional finance isn't just going to go away. Yes, the crypto adoption is increasing, but I mean, we can see the elements in crypto of what you're speaking, when Lambo, that's sort of all those things, that's sort of what they did, that's how they packaged it, which is interesting. You touched on an interesting thing there, that people want sort of instant success or instant gratification. We have all this education out there. Really, nothing is new. Brings me to the second part, is people don't stick with it, right? And I almost feel like people need some sort of incentive or incentive-based program to be rewarded along the way as they, as they go through their education process. Am I reading it wrong, or is this where society is at the moment?
I think so. I mean, it can be a very, very wide debate, but the way I see it is, we go through school from age 3 until age 18, or if we go to college until age 22. Yes. Where we have a pretty regimented life, we go to school, we go home, we go to school, we go home, we have school break, then we go back to school. And after the end of a year, you go to the next year, and then you go to the next year, you go to the next year, then you graduate, then you go to college. It's all very like regimented.
Yeah.
And so here kind of things are kind of like organized for you in a very structured manner. So and so typically typically you can have like it's relatively simple to have good habits just because your time is very structured. I'm not saying I'm not saying teenagers have great habits, but like when you look at the way everything is structured, technically it's supposed to be a lot easier when you're in school. But the thing is, when you graduate and you're left to your own devices, all of a sudden you don't have any structure. Like you don't have an end of year graduation, you don't have school breaks, you don't have like it's pretty much here's time, have fun with it, do whatever. Here's time, here's some money, do whatever you want.
Yeah.
And so I think but I think that human beings, like the way we're set up, is that the more choices we have, the less effective we become. So I think the best way to do it, like without necessarily incentivizing it, but is to help people structure their times, like either from an external force, like joining groups where people keep each other accountable or something, or really teaching about self-discipline in schools, like just teaching kids like setting goals on their own and like following up on their goals, so that they get into the habit of having the discipline to follow up on their goals and follow up on their projects all the time, so that they can really discipline themselves and like get used to for example, they take a financial course, like they just sign up for the course, they finish the course, they don't take another course until they finish this one. But that's the thing is I think the solution would be to like have some structures, but then it goes back to the question, how do you incentivize people to join those structures? That's another question.
I think crypto did it very well with the building of communities and Discord and constant interaction. And I think it's hard. It's going to be hard for traditional finance bringing crypto structures into, because crypto is exciting and traditional finance isn't exciting. But I think if you're going to look at that way, that's maybe one way to do it, or maybe like think about it. But I like what you're saying about there needs to be some sort of incentive structure at least, or how to divide your time. Flo, before I let you go, what is like one trend in growth hacking that you can sort of see coming up on the horizon?
Trends in growth hacking. I think I think that the growth, like we're going to talk a lot less about hacks, and it's not going to be as much about hacks, it's going to be more about fundamentals. So for example, I think that the future is going to be like a lot more, how do I put it? So you're going to have quick results, but those quick results would be the result of a very long-term work. So for example, like the long-term work of building an audience, of building a lot of trust, kind of building all that social capital online through your company or for yourself. And then the moment you launch something, it just takes off because of all that fundamental work you've been doing. You have a very deep understanding of your audience, you have a deep understanding of what they need, you create the perfect product for what they have, for the problem they have, and then you're able to grow just based on that. So I think the trend in growth hacking will be like just create a community online around your product, around like the need that you solve, and then create the products and the services that really fit that need. And I think that's the healthiest way to grow. It's not the fastest one. But it makes sense because you're a finance guy. Usually the quickest way is not the best way.
No, but it makes sense. People want to do something for a week, and then everyone is trying to go viral. So what you're saying is it makes sense. That
you don't want to going viral can be the worst thing that happens to you.
Well, I mean, that's
because
but I mean,
it distorts your expectations, and then you're like, I went viral that one time, and then after 2 weeks, like you don't go viral anymore, and you're like, oh my god, my life is horrible, and you just quit. And
which is this TikTok culture, right? It's perpetuating.
Exactly. Like it's also managing the expectations. I think I mean it's the same thing in finance. If you want to if you want to build like, sustainable wealth or something, you're not going to do it in 1 week. You have to build the right systems. You need to have the right knowledge. You need to have the right fundamentals. And then as a result of all that, like 5 years, 10 years down the line, you're going to start seeing some traction. Yeah. And it's the very same thing with growth hacking. It's the very same thing with anything you do. Yeah. It takes time, but it's not fancy. But if you look at history, like the way everything has been done since the dawn of time or something, the Romans were talking about patience already. The Greeks were talking about patience. The Chinese were talking about patience. They've been around for like 2,000 years, 3,000 years, and might know a thing or two about the world. Yeah. But we don't know.
Well, that's my mantra: is patience is power, and that's where I'm going to leave you today. If the listeners want to connect with you, where's the best place to do that?
The best place is definitely LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn every single day. I post twice a day. So in Asian time, it will be 1:30 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. And that's the best place to connect with me.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. And to our listeners, peace, love, and prosperity. And we'll catch you in the next one. Cheers.